Thank you all for your patience as of late. As always, if you're curious, I share updates on the Post tab on YouTube. Coming back to our house has been a war zone, and we are rearranging nearly our whole house. But we're back home now, and I should be back on camera very soon, as I know it makes the videos a lot more engaging. And I'm not going to circle back to all of the news over the past 4 days, but I did want to touch on a few things before diving into today's news. Elon touched on China's suspension of certain rare earth minerals, which can be argued are not truly rare. It's the refining capacity that's the bottleneck. This will not get much coverage, but from an engineering perspective, it's quite fascinating. You'll recall Tesla saying it's moving to rare earth-free motors for its next-gen vehicles back in 2023, but we really haven't heard much of anything since then. Some of these rare earth elements like neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium are used in permanent magnet motors, which help to make EVs more efficient and powerful. The problem, as we've highlighted before, China controls around 70% of the global rare earth element mining and around 90% of the refining. Thus, when it comes to EV motor production, it all runs through China. To be clear, what China is doing is not an outright ban, they're just placing restrictions on exports. This means that Chinese companies have to get special licenses to export these resources. It's TBD exactly how this will be implemented, but the expectation is a pause in exports in the short term as Beijing gets the licensing system ready, which could lead to short-term disruptions in supply for US companies. And this does go well beyond just the EV world. Fighter jets, submarines, missiles, radar systems, drones, etc. will be impacted. And zooming out, the US relies quite heavily on these rare earths from China, importing about 80% of US supply. Now, the US does have one active rare earth mine, Mountain Pass in California, but obviously that's not going to come close to supplying all of the US needs. Fun fact, the US has 0 commercial scale rare earth magnet production compared to China's 90% market share. But I'm bringing this up because I haven't seen anybody talk about specifics here, and the 7 rare earth elements that China is placing export controls on are as follows: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, luteum, scandium, and yttrium. One that's been left off this list so far, neodymium, is actually a big deal for Tesla. That's because Tesla's permanent magnet motors since about 2017 have been using about 500 grams of neodymium per motor. And in total, Tesla's motors use about 520 grams of rare earth elements according to data from 2023, down 25% since 2017. And for context, that number is a bit lower than the industry average. The reason this matters is because rare earth elements usually account for about 50% of magnet motor costs. And this situation really just highlights another benefit if Tesla can successfully move to rare earth-free motors for its next-gen vehicles. So, per the usual, Tesla's lower rare earth use and their rare earth-free plan have it positioned quite well, but there are still some short-term risks for the supply chain. Given this data, overall, I do not see this situation impacting Tesla in any material way, unlike some people would lead you to believe. You would think next week on Tesla's earnings call, an analyst would ask what Tesla is expecting the margin or supply chain impact to be, but as we've seen, things are changing so fast right now with these trade negotiations. So just a reminder that while China has a host of economic and demographic challenges, they absolutely have leverage in key industries as well. And this writing on the wall that I speak of, listen, I know holding Tesla stock and following the company has at times been challenging the past few years, but the drumbeat has steadily been picking up the past few weeks around FSD. And Elon is really pumping the FSD narrative as of late, which, yes, could mean we're in for a rough Q1, and this is just Elon front-running some poor data. Or it could also be he's increasingly confident unsupervised is right around the corner. And given what he just said, that Tesla vehicles might drive themselves from the factory to customers' homes this year. In my opinion, that's a pretty optimistic take. And we all know the history with Elon's FSD predictions, but it's very clear that right now in Elon's mind, he has a high level of confidence in where Tesla's bleeding edge FSD software is at. Having a look around, Elon said Tesla's full self-driving will amaze you, and interesting that over 44% of respondents, or just under 5,000 respondents from Sawyer's survey, have not tried FSD version 13 at all. Elon said for the first time, there will soon be a generalized pure AI solution to FSD, just cameras and the Tesla AI chip with Tesla AI software. Elon shared a post from Milan saying it's hard to believe until you try it. Milan said, this weekend I drove to Napa and back around 200 miles on FSD. I had max a couple interventions and they were both comfort related. Most people just have not realized yet this technology actually exists now, and you can get it on your own Tesla car. The moment it goes entirely unsupervised will be wild. And Milan had shared this from Joe Rogan, who said, I had my Model S drive me home the other day with FSD and it's wild. Changes lanes to avoid slow traffic, stops at red lights and stop signs, hits the blinkers and turns for you. It's bananas. Brad Gerstner from Altimeter Capital said it's hard to describe how quickly Tesla's FSD changes your driving behavior and makes you happier behind the wheel, less stress, more safe, drives like a human. I find myself smiling and enjoying the car a lot more, and now that I'm hooked, it's worth big money to me. Pierre Ferguson said a year ago, my wife, honey, please take over and drive. This thing freaks me out. My wife today, honey, why don't you let the car drive? I'd feel safer. Says a lot. Something magical happened. And look, not to interrupt the party here, but I know a lot of you are still on FSD version 12 and you're maybe out there rolling your eyes because your experience hasn't been great. The Iowa Tesla guy did actually get a message from Tesla's service saying, we've reviewed your FSD concern and verified the presence of a known firmware characteristic which is under investigation. Once an improvement for this behavior is established, it'll be released through a normal firmware release and installation. So look, I'm not sure this firmware update is going to alleviate all problems with hardware 3 and those limitations, but it's something to keep in mind. I do think, however, we have to acknowledge the discrepancy and the bifurcation of version 13 and version 12. Even though version 12 has been sold as a light version of version 13, in all of my anecdote gathering over the past few months, it's been pretty clear to me that version 12 on hardware 3 is materially behind version 13 on hardware 4. By the way, if you didn't see Tesla's performance on hardware 4 from Kyle Paul, I'll have that video linked below, but it's been out for a few days. I'm guessing most of you have seen it. Spoiler alert, there was no test the fire department and Kyle could run to get Tesla to hit the dummy on FSD. James Dauma said 2 days and 490 miles of winding mountain and coastal roads, several construction zones, including divert into oncoming regulated by a flagger. I had one unplanned disengagement in 10 hours of driving. The drive before that was Portland to Ashland on the 5 with no unplanned disengagements. This is normal for me on recent version 13. Bravo to you and your team. Recent FSD is incredible. Responding to that, Elon said great, but let's not gloss over what Brock said. Potholes are a big problem. Because yes, we absolutely do have craters up here in the Northeast. Robert Scoble shared a story. AI was driving me in the fast lane at nearly 80 miles per hour and all of a sudden it lunged across the yellow line. Before I could take over, a motorcyclist went by at a high rate of speed in my lane or too close for me. The Tesla saw him coming behind me and moved over to let him by. It quickly moved back after the motorcyclist was safely passed. Thank the Lord, Tesla's AI is properly aligned with human outcomes. No mere driver assistance package can do that. People try to claim others are the same. No, they are not. I could keep going, but I think you all get the picture. More and more people are now waking up to the reality of the present version of FSD. That said, I'm not going to lie, I'm very curious what you think the chances of Elon's prediction really happening are. Will we see see a Tesla vehicle driving itself from the factory to a customer's home in 2025. For me, I do not think it will be on a large scale. However, I could absolutely see a handful or maybe a small number of vehicles from Giga Texas leave the factory and go right to a customer's house in Austin. That would be killer marketing and quite feasible. And guess what? Something similar may happen later this year from the Fremont factory. We don't have to dive into it now, but this would really save on logistics costs. It would free up delivery centers. It would greatly improve the customer experience, which is already leaps and bounds above the rest of the industry. And again, I think this would make for very powerful and viral content. And I know we haven't had an FSD update for a while now, and I know this current software iteration still has some problems, but don't forget, FSD will be overfit for Austin come June. Tesla is undoubtedly testing and training heavily with Austin data, and assuming it's version 14 that the team is working on, I think we may be in for a treat here very soon. And we know Tesla will take the unsupervised rollout slow, but it really feels like most people are not seeing a few plays ahead where Tesla can deploy unsupervised version 14 to a majority of the world in relatively short order. It will simply be dependent upon regulations. And if things go well in Austin and California and other jurisdictions are smart, they'll be ready to move quickly to let Tesla expand in their regions, as it will change the game for the cost of transport. And I think most of us would agree, it's not really if Tesla figures this out, it's when. No matter how skeptical you are, given the progress Tesla's made and what they're doing with Cortex and the continuous advancements in chip tech paired with better machine learning techniques, and it's just a matter of time, in my eyes, at least for version 13 and hardware 4. Shifting gears a bit to the long-range Cybertruck, of course the good news dropped right after I uploaded Thursday's episode, but that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. This may sound crazy, but given the writing on the wall, the Cybertruck line for Tesla is just not going to be a meaningful driver for stock price appreciation. Even if Tesla finds a way to sell 250,000 units per year, at a net income margin of 5%, that's a $1 billion annual business. Whereas if Tesla ends up selling 50,000 or so per year, that business might do a few $100 million in annual net income. So not that the Cybertruck doesn't matter, but to deem Tesla a failure, even if the Cybertruck flops and never does 250,000 a year, is just not a good take because of how small its relative impact will be to Tesla's future. And I do think Tesla eventually drops a $59,000 Cybertruck variant, but from their perspective, it makes sense to test the market at $69,000 and go from there. For me, I'm more focused on energy optimization and vitality rather than living to 150 or something. Sure, they go hand in hand to some degree, but Gary Brecka just said that your anxiety may be stemming from a nutrient deficiency. You've heard me say time and time again, nutrient deficiencies are way more common than people realize, with so many people having digestive issues, which leads to malabsorption and food quality degrading thanks to corporate greed, which yes, is why I'm still encouraging everyone to try AG1 for themselves, the sponsor of this video. My life has been a whirlwind the past few weeks, and it's been nearly impossible to eat like I usually would. Seasons like this are when the importance of AG1 is increased even higher than usual, because without time or access to prepare meals like I usually would, I get some peace of mind knowing when I drink AG1 throughout the day, I get 75 vitamins, minerals, and probiotics that I know is sourced with the highest of standards from whole food ingredients, because AG1 is very transparent in the reports they put out. Speaking of absorption, the powder form of AG1 was seen to digest faster than a multivitamin, with 4.4 times more minerals available for absorption compared to a multi-tablet. Then, in an observational study with regular use over 3 months, AG1 was seen to positively impact feelings of calm, energy, and improved digestion. So, if you'd like to get some free travel packs and a 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and some other goodies with the welcome kit, you can head to drinkag1.com/electrified, linked below, or you can use the QR code on the screen. Cheers. And the last thing on the Cox data, I just find it funny to watch how everyone can cherry pick data. I mean, just watch how easy this is, and then when you know the intimate details of Tesla, you learn that it's mostly nonsense. Plenty of headlines saying Tesla outsold the next 10 EV brands combined in Q1 2025. And yes, that's factually accurate, but that's really been the case now for a while because looking at the data, it's just there really isn't that much competition for full EV sales in the US. By brand, Ford was in the number 2 spot at just over 22,000, followed by Chevy at just over 19,000, so they can't even do over 10,000 EVs per month. On the flip side, you'll see other headlines saying Tesla sales cratering down 9% year over year for Q1, which, okay, sure is accurate, but leaves out all of the context for Q1, like the changeover to the new Model Y. Then you have plenty of people saying Cybertruck sales are up over 128% year over year. But that completely leaves out that the Cybertruck was just beginning the ramp in Q1 of last year. It also leaves out that Tesla only sold about 6,400 Cybertrucks in the US in Q1, which is where it sells the majority of those vehicles. How about people saying, well, look at the Model 3, it was up 70% year over year, so clearly that line is doing great. But that leaves out the context that Q1 of last year, they were ramping up the new version, and it took a lot longer than expected to get production back up to regular levels. Or the other headline saying the Model Y sales are cratering because it's down 34% year over year, which again leaves out very important context. So just keep all of that in mind. Don't let yourself be manipulated by how people choose to frame this data, and really all data for that matter. Zooming out though, which removes the impact of some of that context at least a bit, total full EV sales in Q1 in the US were actually up 10.6% for Q1.
It looks like you got one of these guys, a Tesla terrorist, and he's got some lipstick. What's that?
You know, Jesse, this guy is charged with committing the Tesla offense in New Mexico in February, and then the GOP headquarters in March. These people thought they could get away with it. They can't. This is our 5th major arrest on Tesla. I guess they are listening. They better listen. This guy is looking at 40 years in prison. I have directed my prosecutors not to make any offers. He is going away, if convicted, for 40 years. He is the 5th major arrest we've made, and stay tuned for more.
I'm sure many of you have seen this already, but quickly for the few that haven't, the Bargersville Police Department shared that they have saved nearly $500,000 over the past 5 years from owning a Tesla police fleet. Their chief said they have not had major issues with their makes and models and are happy with how cost-effective the vehicles have proved to be. Since 2020, I'd say we've been saving about $70,000 to $80,000 a year from having our vehicles, and the more cars we get, the more savings too. The police chief also said they've never had to replace any brakes on the Teslas. The weekly Tesla China number came in at 5,400. Comparing that to the same week in Q1, that number was 7,800. So quarter over quarter, Tesla China is down about 33%. And comparing to week 2 of Q2 last year, that number was 6,230, which means year over year, Tesla China is now up 10.5%. But given we're into Q2, the number I like to watch the most is the year-to-date figure, and so far that number is up 2.9%. The breakdown for the week was 3,900 Model Y and 1,500 Model 3. Tesla's spring release is now officially rolling out to the fleet. So far, I believe it's only for AI4 vehicles. And as always, there will be some undocumented changes that are nice surprises, like this one, which is a new wider angle rear view that's supposed to improve the visibility of rear cross traffic. Not only that, but the side repeater cameras are now shown at the top. And here's some video footage of the B pillars now recording video footage for the dash cam and Sentry, which will be very helpful. And another, you can now auto-enable Sentry mode in park, while still choosing to exclude home, work, and favorites. There was some news that Honda was aiming for 90% of cars sold in the US to be made in the US thanks to the tariffs, but Honda responded to this saying no changes are being considered at this time. Honda has not made any production decisions that affect operations in Mexico, nor are there any currently being considered. Lucid is on track to launch its midsize SUV in 2026. This is the one they're aiming to price around $50,000. The Say website for Tesla's Q1 call is now live, and already, per the usual, I am quite disappointed. The first question's fine. When will FSD unsupervised be available for personal use on personally owned cars? I would say 2026. Is Tesla on track for releasing more affordable models this year? Yes. Will Tesla be focusing on simplified versions to enhance affordability? Yes. Even though Elon and the team might try to position it differently, I think ultimately that's what we're going to get. How is Tesla positioning itself to flexibly adapt to global economic risks in the form of tariffs and political bias? I would say look at the last 10 years of Tesla's history and localization of production, its warp speed company operating software, developing an agile manufacturing strategy. So it's really business as usual for Tesla. Did Tesla experience any meaningful changes in order flow inflow rate in Q1 relating to brand damage? Even if it did, I don't think Tesla's going to admit that. Finally, a good and fair question. Does Tesla still have a battery supply constraint, and how does this change with tariffs? Robotaxi still on track for this year? Yes. There you have it. Tesla's earnings will be April 22nd, next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This quarter's voting for the next supercharger locations is now live, so go ahead and cast your votes. The link will be below. Tesla stock closed the day at $254.11, up 0.7%, while the NDX was up 0.18%. Finally, we had a low volume day, trading about 43% below the average. Don't forget, check out AG1 linked below for those interested, and as always, thank you very much for supporting the channel in this way. I'll leave it there for now as I work to get back into the swing of things. Again, thank you all for the patience. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.